Paul Hargreaves, the CEO of Cotswold Fayre.
Oh, that was it, right. I thought I was expecting a bigger bio than that, right. So, yeah, as I said, I'm going to just quickly run through the last 25 years. Well, actually, you might notice that there is something wrong with our maths, because 2025 minus 1999 isn't 25, right? Anyone spot that? Well, we were going to have this event last October, but we couldn't get enough of you to come. Probably a silly idea having it in Q4, which is the busiest quarter for food producers. So here we are, slightly later than planned, but we're still going to celebrate our 25th. Hope you're all staying for the party later on. Now, some of you may not know about the origins of Cotswold Fayre, and apologies for those who do. But why we call Cotswold Fayre, for a start, when we're based in Reading. Reading isn't in the Cotswolds, last time I checked. So, the business started, I knew a few food producers in the Cotswolds, put a few boxes in the back of my car, and started selling these lovely Cotswold products to mainly delis in London and farm shops in Kent. I lived in southeast London at the time, started doing that kind of mid-90s, very, very part-time. It was like a day a week, that was it. I was doing charity work in the inner city in London, dealing with mainly drug addicts, criminals. I've probably been to prison more times than most of you have had hot dinners. Not as an inmate, I hasten to add, but visiting mainly my neighbours, actually, who were in prison. I mean, half my street was criminals, and some of them knew the craze, apparently. And let's not go there, we get conscious of time. So I was doing charity work, money ran out, needed to make some money, started selling food products. Then the money ran out even more, so I thought, help, what am I going to do? I met a guy who also didn't really know what he was doing in his life. He lived in Reading, so there's the Reading connection. He was called David, not the Dave at Cotswold Fayre you might know, another one. And he also had come from charity work. He'd been working in Africa, and he also kind of wanted to do the charity stuff and the business stuff at the same time. So we were both very much aligned in terms of wanting business to be a force for good. Having said that, just before that, the original idea actually came from one of my customers when I was doing the very part-time Cotswold thing. I'd extended a bit into Berkshire by then. And actually, Tom, who's going to be on the panel later on, the site, which is now a Cobb's, was a place called High Close Farm Shop. And there was a lady there called Jackie, and she said to me, she said, I've got a real problem. So just remember, this is in the very, very early days of farm shops. There was no consolidation going on of British products. And Jackie said to me, you need to start a business where you're basically delivering a lot more products to me, because I'm sick of all these white vans turning up at my back door. I'm sick of placing 200 orders a week. I need someone to make my life easier. So that was the seed that was planted. Sadly, her marriage split up, and she was actually going to come into business with me, but she couldn't because of her changed situation. She moved to North Wales. So right at the very beginning of Cotswold Fayre was A, being a force for good, and B, the consolidation piece. And for those of you who weren't around, actually, let's have a show of hands. Who works for a business that existed in 1999? Okay, so probably that's 20% of the room. The world of specialty food was absolutely tiny back then. For those of you who weren't around then, in fact, some of you probably weren't even born, you don't know how small it was. It was so small, the first ever specialty food show, thanks to our sponsors again, got to keep plugging them, was so small, there was about 40 stands in the middle of Olympia. for anyone who set up a show, you're going to hate me in a minute. It was so small, they actually let you drive your car in and park next to the stand to unload. None of that humping boxes around from 2 miles down the road. You could park next to your stand. It's ridiculous. If only life was that easy now. But then we wouldn't have the industry we have, so let's not complain. The only problem with the parking next to the stand thing was when I left in my very humble, I think I had a Alston Montego at the time. Anyone remember them? Absolute rust buckets they were. But used a little too much gas when I was exiting, and in my rearview mirror I saw a load of carpet tiles flying in the air. So I quickly left and made sure I wasn't the first one in the next day. So right at the beginning of Cotswold Fayre, there was this sense of purpose. Of our first 5 employees, 3 of them were troubled people. There was one guy just come out of Reading prison. There was an ex-alcoholic, and there was an ex-drug addict who come off heroin. So right from the beginning, there was a sense of wanting to use business to change the world for good. And I think that's important because that's very much in our ethos. That's actually our first warehouse, if you can call it that. It's more like a lock-up garage. Very bad photo, but there wasn't even digital cameras in those days. Can you believe that? Anyway, let's forget the history lesson. In 2001, my business partner had had enough. We were losing shed loads of money. Not great. And we both had young kids, and it was all too much. Probably for both of us, but someone had to stay. In fact, I was very happy to give it to him. I was in China visiting some friends who were working in an orphanage over there, and I'd actually decided I was going to give the business to him. On the plane journey back, I was going to come back and said, right, Dave, here you go. But the trouble is, while I was away, he'd come to the same conclusion. So it's like, oh, okay, I can't give it to you. It was hard work, as anyone who started their own business knows. It's bloody hard work and is a lot of graft. And as a result of that, I lost my way after he left. It was just trying to pay the wages at the end of the month. And it didn't always happen, to be honest, which is slightly embarrassing, isn't it, when you've got people working for you and there's no money in their account. One thing that did happen in 2001, which is significant, and I guess some of you might remember this, is foot and mouth disease. Do you remember that? It was a huge crisis for the farming industry. Terrible news. But the good that came out of that was that a lot of farms started diversifying. A lot of farm shops started around that time, or if they were pick-your-own sheds, they became proper retail businesses. So things had started to happen. Let's flip forward to 2004. By this time, revenue was only about 1.5 million. 2004 was the year that Whole Foods came to the UK. They brought a company called Fresh and Wild, which had a few shops, I can't remember how many. Jade will tell us later when she's on the stage. Ocado had started a couple of years earlier, but was started to gain traction. Supermarkets started to stock specialty food, much more than they had before. Garden centres that had largely been full of tat, still are in some cases, started to do decent food halls, and things started to move forward. We started supplying our first chain of garden centres in 2004. It's a chain called Not Cuts. But I could say this was a part of a great plan to grow a specialty food wholesaler, but I'd be lying. We just happened to be in the right place at the right time. We grew with the industry. Having said that, I wasn't enjoying it. I actually hated my own business. Seems strange to say that, but I mean, it's not great fun being on a forklift at midnight when everyone else has gone home, trying to squeeze a load of Christmas products into the warehouse when they don't really fit. That was me. We had got to about £5 million revenue by this point. I did have a couple of offers to buy the business, and I tried to make that happen. They didn't. But the main reason I was unhappy was I hadn't really aligned my personal purpose, which is, to make the world better, whether that's through doing stuff with people, relieving poverty and stuff like that. I hadn't aligned that with the business case for that. And that came a bit later on. So we were making some money at this point, which is good news. So in 2011, I thought, what can we do with some profit that we're making to help people? I wrote to a few food charities and said, look, can we not only give you money, can we come and get our hands dirty and do something to help you? They all wrote back and said, basically, we'll take your money, but we don't want anything more than that. I wanted more than that. I wanted to get my hands dirty. I wanted to introduce the people that work for us to situations and wanted more than that. So I knew of this project in Western Kenya, took my daughter there in summer 2011. She was 15 at the time. Life-changing moment for her. She's pretty much spent her whole life working with kids ever since. She's now a teacher in Newcastle. But something really, really interesting happened, both in me, because I'd never really seen that level of poverty before, but more importantly, in the people that work for us. When I came back to the office, I couldn't really talk about it for 2 weeks without crying. But when I finally managed to get some words out, it was really, really interesting what happened. People were energized about the fact they worked for a company that was trying to do some good in the world. So my ears pricked up, and one particular person that worked for us, called Holly, said, she worked part-time, she worked 3 days a week. She said, in my other 2 days a week, I'll help you organise a fundraising ball, which was very decent of her. So she didn't charge us for doing it. Actually, and that was here. In 2012, we, in the old bit of this hotel, which is over there somewhere, we had our first ball, 2012. We raised about 25,000 quid, which went into starting a farm. So I then became a farmer in Africa, which involved 2 trips a year for a while to try and make this farm work and try and make the farm generate enough income to support this community of mainly AIDS orphans at the time, and 2 schools and an orphanage. But most interesting for us now is that this did change the dynamics of the company. People seemed, well, not everyone actually, I'd be lying if I said that, but a lot of people in the business were much happier to be in a business that was doing some good. And obviously that is much more widely the case now than it was then. Just a diversion to something else, again, which we may well pick up in the future. In 2013, I noticed, it was probably 2012 when I noticed it, that most people in the specialty food sector were quite, well, certainly more than middle-aged, shall we say. There weren't very many young people in the business in the industry at the time. So we thought, well, let's try and do something about it. We had a competition called the Young Entrepreneur of the Year. We had a cash prize. We had mentoring for them for a year. So for 5 years, we ran that. I think I've got a picture. Yeah, that, I confess, that isn't the first winner. I couldn't find a picture of the first winner. I think that was year 2. And now look at us, not necessarily this room, but look at the industry. It's fantastic how many young people are coming into the food and drink space. Far, far more than there was back then. So that's something I think we may well pick up in the future. I mean, just to give you an idea, Dragon's Den, this current series, there's an average of more than 1 supplier a week on this current show. And actually, at Cotswold Fayre, we're not going to be as greedy if we did invest in small businesses, and we're probably going to be a bit more used than some of the dragons, dare we say it, because we have a broad range of skills in the business that could help these businesses scale. Skip forward to 2014. By now, we were in our 4th warehouse. Revenue was about £10 million. We needed to automate the warehouse side of life. We put in a warehouse management system. almost lost the company. There's probably some suppliers in the room who were with us at that time. I'll apologise again for that time, because it was horrendous. Customers weren't getting their orders at all in some cases. In other cases, they were getting half of them. We were in a complete and utter meltdown. We had the stock in the warehouse, but it was a computer says no scenario, and customers weren't getting their stuff. Lisa, who sadly currently has got cancer, very much part of the business still, she started work for us at that time. And I know for a fact, well, I said to someone else, she'll last 3 weeks, and then she'll be out of here, because it was so bad. One day, there were 96 unanswered messages on the voicemail, pretty much all of which were customer complaints. Not a great time at all. Very good chance we could have gone out of business. So we were due to go on a family holiday to Route 66. I actually rang my kids 3 days before we were due to go to say, sorry guys, the holiday's cancelled. You can imagine how pleased they were about that. Not. We did actually end up going. I mean, I think, to be honest with you, Jeremy, who's in the room, was our non-exec at the time. Here he is. He basically said, get the hell out of here. You're bloody useless, running around like a headless chicken. Have your holiday, and we'll try and sort it while you're away. So it was a great holiday and a horrible holiday, because I was expecting to come back to not having a business. Now, the interesting thing is, I now know, I didn't then, but most success stories have an element of failure in them. Most people who have achieved stuff in life actually have a dark time where things go Pete Tong. That's really one of the premises of the podcast I'm starting. I think everyone I've had on the show so far has had a really bad time, yet good has come out of it. Sorry if you haven't had a bad time yet, because I don't want to be a harbinger of doom. But it makes us better people. You know, my identity was as a CEO, as what I did. That doesn't really work. The whole way we were running the business wasn't really working. So the whole thing was a complete wake-up call, which I needed, the business needed. And really, this was a really dark time. But now I look back on it, I wouldn't have swapped it for the world. Because that was the start. It was the start of the new Cotswold Fayre. It was also the start of the new Paul Hargreaves. And also happened to be the year I married my gorgeous wife, Nicola, who's sitting here, shaking her head. But it was a new start in lots of different ways. Now, the interesting thing, half the people in the business left. And they were probably the half we wanted to leave, if I'm honest with you, at that point. It left the people who were a solid core. It was, yeah. I won't carry on because I'm going to start crying. We had 3 fallow years after this in terms of growth. You'll see the growth curve in a minute. But 3 very significant things happened over the next 3 years. 2015, we became a B Corp. I heard about B Corp from a friend of mine, Ed Perry, who's founder of Cook. He told me about this thing called B Corp. I said, Ed, it sounds a bit American to me. I'm not interested. But looked into it a bit more. I was really interested because suddenly I thought, well, we were the only ones trying to be a business that was changing the world for good. And suddenly, here was a whole community of people who believed the same as we did. So that was obviously a hugely significant moment. We were one of the first 40 B Corps in the UK. And since then, we've been responsible for many, many other businesses going down the same route. The second significant thing was outsourcing our logistics, which happened in 2016. We did actually start Chilled as an outsourced model, which partly inspired us to do the whole thing. And that was one of the best decisions we ever made. Come on to that a bit in a minute. It was also time to kind of embed our culture. Yes, we had become a B Corp, but some of that culture needed embedding and reinforcing. And does everyone really get it? We did some work on our purpose, which was slightly different to that, but along the same lines. And we helped articulate our values. And Andrew Thornton, who'll be here this afternoon speaking, him and his partner Eudora were two people that helped us find our way forward on that front. So a flat line, but very significant time for the company. Skip forward to 2019. This, I think, was one of the most significant years in the history of Cotswold Fayre. It happened to be our 20th birthday as well. There was the cake looks a bit of a sad B Corp logo on there, if you can see. It was actually the last time we had a supplier conference. Now, if you cast your mind back to May 2019, Blue Planet was on TV. David Attenborough was suddenly this huge legend. He was already, actually, but more people woke up to the fact that he was. There was even the government declared a climate emergency in 2019. Can you believe? Not a lot's happened since then on that front, but they were trying, very trying. And we had a very, very significant supplier conference. People woke up to the idea that actually our actions in the global north impacted people in other parts of the world, and actually through our actions people were dying. And we had a very powerful time. We did a bit of a pledge thing then as well. There were lots of tears in the house, and it was a significant moment. And a lot of the pledges from that time were, we need to do something about this. And we kept those pledges on our office wall, and they were there for about 2 years, and I know many of them were acted on. We became carbon neutral at that point. Not the whole answer to decarbonisation, but it's a step along the journey. We actually reduced our carbon that year by 47% by changing the way we did our logistics. I published my first book, Forces for Good, which enabled me to have more opportunity to talk to other businesses about being a force for good. The other thing that happened in 2019 was we actually had another warehouse meltdown. This was due to a warehouse move, and everything went completely wrong yet again. Big difference, though. Between that and 2014, we had a much stronger team by this point. We were much more aligned, much more resilience in the business. Everyone pulled together massively. No one left. We came through the other side. And looking back on it now, it was almost like we had our COVID before COVID, because it was a hell of a time. We got through it, and it made us really, really strong for what came in only a few months' time. Also the year, I think, so I couldn't find any more covers, I think 2019-20 was the first year we published our impact report, which for me is one of my favourite days of the year when we publish that, because it just makes me happy that we can, in our own small way, have an impact on the world. Yes, numbers are important, but even if we have a year when numbers haven't been as good, we can think, well, wow, we have actually made a difference in the world this year. So on to 2020. We all know what happened then. COVID. So as you can see, that is the growth curve of Cotswold Fayre. There's the plateau I was just talking about. And then, always been growth apart from then. Massive increase in growth. And as I said, we'd gone through some of the pain before, but 3 reasons I think we did do a lot better than our other wholesalers at that time was we had a fantastically strong team that really pulled together. We had a huge realisation that some of our retail customers, mainly farm shops, village stores, convenience stores, were just fantastic beacons of light within the community. I know there were many farm shops got rid of their cafes because they weren't allowed to, and started using that space to pack boxes for people who are stuck at home. And as I said, we never would have had that growth without the outsourced logistics. Just wouldn't have coped with it, both in terms of space and manpower. So that, for me, is why I'm so happy we did that a few years previously. 2021, we started Flourish. been in the planning for a few years before that. And this was a really interesting project, a big project. I was interested to do it for a number of reasons, having not really wanted to originally, but I'd seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of retailing across the previous 20-odd years. And, none of my good ideas are my ideas. I just nick them from other people. That's what most successful people do, just steal ideas. And so having an opportunity to put all those good ideas in one place was a fantastic opportunity. I'd always wanted to, and we had done some of this when we ran a warehouse, I'd always wanted to take people who probably weren't as easily able to get jobs. I remember going to a cafe in Jersey once, and all the front of house people there were Down syndrome, and it was one of the most beautiful lunches I've ever had in my life. They're bright, smiling faces serving me. Could we do a bit of that? Could we start a brand new business with none of the same people and put in the B Corp stuff right from the start, having learnt all the lessons we'd learnt previous to that? The answer was yes. And here it is. We're going to hear from Nadia now, I think, if this works.
I'm Nadia. I come from Ukraine. 2 years ago, I started working at Flourish in the middle of July. This year, I will celebrate 2 years in Flourish, this amazing place. So I'm really happy to be here. First of all, because of the strong support, and every time my team is asking, how are you, can we help you in some way? And honestly, I have a lot of things which already we sorted out with my managers. So for example, it was child benefit, it was warm discount for my mom. We also made internet broadband when we just moved to Brislington. And I'm really happy that I have amazing people around me, and I think I'm so happy to be in such a wonderful place. I like this location. Our customers is so great. Basically, hospitality is my vibe. I have a huge experience in this area, so when I found this job, I was like thinking, wow.
That is one of the great reasons for doing that. Moving forward, 22, we started Flourish Home and Lifestyle, came about slightly by accident. We got this extra space. What would we do with it? Started a home and lifestyle store. And as a result of that, we now do non-food in the Cotswold Fayre range due to some of the brands that we took on there from the start. 2023, we launched Frozen. That isn't a pitch from 23, that's more recently. And that's early days, but going to be a significant part of the growth of the business moving forward. Also started the charitable trust in 23, which so far has made donations to those charities. And as I said, the money we raise today will be going to those and some more. 2024, we opened our second Flourish. Here it is, between Bath and Frome. And that was probably the highlight of last year. So, just to finish, what lessons have I learned over the last 26 years? More than this, but these are the four big ones, and I've put them into each decade. So in the 90s, I knew business could be a force for good, kind of knew it, but I'm not sure I really believed it. It took me the next 15 years to really realize that business could be the main change agent for the world. In the noughties, I realized that people are absolutely everything. Did a few posts on social media this week about this. We've lost the art of relationship in business, I think. We need to rediscover it. Yeah, digital transformation is fantastic, and we all need it. But let's not neglect friendships and relationships. They are what makes business work, and all the good things over the last 26 years have had people at their hearts, whether that's our own people, customers, suppliers, the people in the communities that we help. So let's get back to good relationships, and obviously face-to-face events like this help with that. I kind of realised that, probably a bit belatedly, that if I was going to change the world through business for better, it did actually involve changing myself. And that book, which you've got in your goodie bags, is basically about personal change and how to be a more compassionate, loving, empathetic, courageous person. So do read it when you get it. It's a very easy book to read. 50 days. It's a 50-day course. There's about 4 pages to read a day. I'm sure you can manage that. So changing ourselves is part of this business revolution. And finally, in the 20s, which we're obviously still in, I've realised that because we have had huge growth, I mean, the COVID 2 years we grew from 13 to 30 million, we realise that the bigger we get, the more impact we have. And that's what the rest of today is about. It's about getting bigger, better, and making more difference to the world. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Paul.